Let's get into
Should we
it.
get into it?
We got to talk about this. We got to dive in.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Elizabeth and Ash Show. Cadillac, baby.
Cadillac has its drivers, finally. The worst kept secret, I think, in Formula One in recent times. We have Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. They will be the guys who are leading the charge at Cadillac in the 2026 F1 season. I have not seen if they have multi-year contracts, but it is definitely a smart idea to get some talented, experienced fellas behind the wheel as you move into your first ever season. These are guys who know how to make a backmarker team work and how to make a front-running team work. So you've got the whole spectrum.
According to Nate Saunders at ESPN, they are probably looking at multi-year contracts because Sergio Perez was not sure if he wanted to come back. He was kind of seesawing back and forth. So according to Nate, that there is a multi-year contract for both of them because they're both like, oh, I don't really know. Like, it's not worth it if it's
Yeah. I was gonna say it kind of makes sense that they would put them in for this like regulatory change, get them used to it,
yeah,
kind of grow the team a little bit, and then as we, move on to the next phase of their existence, you probably want to get some younger talent in there.
It does make a lot of sense. I know Elizabeth and I talked about, like, I raced Jack Aitken, and we were talking about Felipe Nasser and stuff like that, and that would have been nice. Those would have been, like, obviously, they're all very talented and great drivers. I think, obviously, with the experience that's Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez bring, it makes sense. I do find it interesting that both of those guys have played second fiddle for so long. And I don't know if they're like, I want to prove myself. Like, I have so much to say. Like, I have so much development knowledge. Like, finally, can someone consider my opinion? And, like, kind of, like, really empowering them and, like, coaching them and, like, everyone just, like, working together to make this team. I feel like it's kind of, like, a cool story to tell in the long run.
Yeah. I think it's going to be... I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's a good lineup. I think it makes sense. Cadillac had a very long short list of drivers that it liked to talk about, and a lot of people I have seen are like bringing that up of like, well, if it was just going to be the two old guys, why wasn't it any like why did we have this whole discussion? In one of the press conferences, they discussed this and they said that they were really heavily considering some of the fellas from Cadillac's WEC program. The endurance racing aspect was very important to them, but ultimately they decided to go for the experience and specifically F1 with an eye to bringing in these other younger talented drivers in the future. We are like, I don't know. It just makes sense. I see someone in the chat asked what are their development records. Both are very good in terms of the car development front. I know like we look at Valtteri Bottas and the most recent experience these gentlemen have had in F1 has not been great. Do not look at 2024. That throw it in the trash, doesn't count. Perez at Racing Point, Force India, etc., had a very strong track record there. The team enjoyed working with him. If you've I've talked to people on that team, read books from the folks who have written, worked on that team. He was great at giving feedback. He was a great team player, and he was also I think we forget that he is the guy who saved Force India. He pushed Force India to go into administration so that it could be bought out. He did that because they were no longer paying his contracts. Had that not happened, the team would have dissolved, probably gone bankrupt and then been over. So shout out to him. That's why we have Aston Martin. And Valtteri Bottas is a very similar situation at Williams, where he used to race. They loved his feedback. They loved what he was able to contribute. Moved on to Mercedes, where clearly it was going to be Lewis Hamilton, who's the number one driver, but Valtteri Bottas played a very strong, I don't want to say second fiddle, but like support role to guarantee that the team finished at the top of the charts.
Yeah, I say second fiddle.
And when Perez moved to Red Bull, again, very similar. He had a very strong track record until he had a developmental issue with the car, and Red Bull was not listening to his feedback in terms of development. I think they're well positioned to be in a team that will listen to them, that will be taking all of their feedback and seeing where they can go in the future.
Shred saying Bottas and Perez are leagues above half the field. It wasn't that they were bad. It was business for Caddy for the 2026 title. Now, I don't think they're going to be contending for the 26 title right off the gate. It would be sick, but if they have a car that works for 90% of the races, it doesn't DNF due to any mechanical issues, they have their pit stops, everything locked in, I feel like that'd be a pretty good... I guess that's the question. What are we judging them on for 2026? What's a realistic expectation for Cadillac?
That's such a good question, and I think it's so hard to know now because the last time we had a brand new team that was coming in was Haas in 2016. And Haas came in Haas has a very like unique business plan where it purchased like some parts of the defunct Manor Marussia team. It outsourced a lot of the componentry of its,
Mhm.
its chassis is Dallara, its engine is Ferrari, a lot of its gearbox stuff. Like this was all outsourced, so they're not making anything in-house. And they did pretty well. I think Cadillac, the expectations are a lot higher, but the competition is now more challenging. And also considering the 2026 regulations that are going to completely transform what we know F1 to be today. It is the biggest regulatory transformation in the sport's history. I don't believe we've ever done such a big chassis, aerodynamic, and power unit situation all at once. I think a good expectation is just like contending for points.
Mhm.
If you finish in the points, that should be considered a success. If your car finishes more races than it retires from, I think that should be considered a good success.
Yep.
And I think this is probably also going to be a matter of integrating into the paddock, finding ways to exist in that space. And if they are able to do that, considering all of the backlash that came when it was Andretti, all of the frustrations I think that they currently exist with regards to the media strategy of Cadillac at the moment. I think that I think they're going to be solid, honestly. I think it'll be fine.
Francis saying engine not going bang is a good start. Then folks saying that the engine's Ferrari. That's fine, but Ferrari just gives you the engine. They have to figure out the cooling and everything else. So like that
Mhm.
plays a part in it. So like the engine, yes, Ferrari will give it to them, but they have to build around it.
Mhm.
So let's see if they can build around a Ferrari engine, and we'll see how they compare to other Ferrari engined teams. Is
Mhm.
very, very important. Seth says, I don't understand why GM continues to build its top end racing teams around Caddy instead of Chevy. They don't want to sell Corvettes. It's just weird to me.
They do want to sell Corvettes, but the market for Corvettes internationally is not quite as hefty as other vehicles. They're choosing Cadillac because Cadillac is taking on a more electrified approach to car construction. And if you are trying to sell cars in Europe, you have to be conscious of the fact that a lot of these countries have EV mandates that are coming in. You have to have electrification. Corvette, Americans, we love that shit.
Yeah.
Specific people overseas also love that shit. I also think that you're going to have a much better chance with Cadillac. It is a luxurious brand. It is a brand that you can kind of get away with hyping up a little bit more than Corvette. Corvette, like we have associations with Corvette, right? Cadillac is working on revitalizing its brand image. I know we are like Cadillac for old people, but Cadillac is also an aspirational brand, and it has been an achievable aspirational brand. Growing up in Michigan, that was like what people wanted. Um, you know, you wanted to afford a Cadillac one day, and you could afford a Cadillac one day. It wasn't like a Lamborghini or something. So it makes more sense, kind of on an international global scale, that they would opt for a brand that has kind of more of a pinkies out quality, and more of an electrified quality.
I like what Chap said. No one watched Top Gear. They know why you don't want to drive a car with 3 inches of ride height in Europe. Interesting enough, when I am very fortunate to work with Cadillac in World Endurance and stuff like that, right? People will talk about the Corvettes during the race in the
Yeah.
GT3 LM GT3 category, but they just specifically asked me, just like don't really mention it, don't talk about it. So they do
Yeah.
like to also keep the brand separate, um,
Yes.
underneath their overall or overarching umbrella.
And if you also want to dig into Cadillac's marketing strategy and sales strategy further in Europe, it is a much different
Hmm.
experience, I think, than we have here in the United States. I had a chance to visit Cadillac's Paris dealership, and its dealership, like we picture in America, like a big parking lot with a lot of cars stacked in it, and like, you go into the building and there's like some show cars. This is like a beautiful Victorian, pre-Victorian building that they have taken and renovated right across from the opera. So this is high traffic, high foot traffic. Like people are here. It is a gorgeous building
It's
where you come in
stunning.
and there's like a show car and you can like get on these little computers and like customize things. You can touch all of the fabrics that you can customize your car with. It's a like more luxury high-end bespoke experience that is better fitting to kind of the European audience, specifically in those big cities where there is not the space to do what we do in the United States. We have plenty of real estate in which we can spread out our wares. They're not doing that over there. They have a building. It's a very different experience. If you dig into it, it's very, very cool.
Mm.
I've written some stories about it and I've published some videos about it. This was last year in June. So if you want to see those, look further into it. I think it helps make a little bit more sense of why this strategy is working.
Square is asking, do you think the F1 cost cap helps or hinders a new team like Cadillac from becoming competitive in their first few seasons?
That's a great question. I think we're going to see because this is the first time we've had a car manufacturer, new team come in with the cost cap in
Hmm.
place. I think it's going to be a good thing in a lot of ways because if you remember the reason we had the cost cap in the first place, Mercedes at the time was able to spend $500 million on developing the car, and Haas was spending like 100 million or less on these things. It's a very diverse field. Obviously, Haas is never going to be able to compete with Mercedes if Mercedes is having hundreds of millions of dollars more of investment in this. I think it's going to be good for Cadillac because Cadillac had a certain amount of time where it began development on this car before it was supposed to follow the cost cap. So they were able to get some of the initial development work out of the way when they could spend as much as they wanted. As soon as the FIA said, yes, you are in, when the provisional entry came last November, that was when they had to begin operating under cost cap standards. So they likely had a groundwork in place already, and now we'll be conforming to the rest of the cost cap situation. I just think it's good in the sense that like I don't think you would have had interest in this from an American manufacturer if there was not a certain amount of a level playing field involved. If we did not have the cost cap, I just don't think it would have happened.
Square says, are we adding Cadillac because they're an American entity and trying to grow viewership? It wasn't just like, oh, we need to add an 11th team and we're going to do that for funsies. This was like a
Yes.
fight.
Yes. So what happened? Let me preface
Oh,
this.
jeez.
Four
There was some
four
politics
teams.
involved. So we have to be
Yes.
kind of, I don't know if we have to be careful, but like,
Yeah. The FIA every so often will open an expression of interest. This allows various entities to submit an application to say, we would like to have a Formula One team. Here are our qualifications. Here is what we think we can do well and what we can contribute financially, commercially, and performance wise. You then have to convince them that you not only have this great product and a capable team under your belt, but you have to prove that you deserve a spot amongst the other teams. Cadillac entered as Andretti. There were personal concerns with the Andretti family, particularly Michael Andretti, um, regarding his performance in Formula One and the way that people think of him. That caused a lot of problems with, there was friction. It resulted in a disqualification of them. The FOM, Formula One Management, the commercial arm said, no, we don't think that Andretti has enough value for this. However, it did leave the door open to say if Cadillac were to be a bigger partner, we would be much more interested in signing them. They see a commercial benefit in that, and having Cadillac, they see a geographic benefit. They're targeting an American audience at the moment. They want to continue growing and developing that audience. Cadillac is a great way to do it. It brings a legitimacy in the terms of the manufacturer, whereas now, we're going into 2026. We have Cadillac, we have Audi, Ford, Honda, Mercedes, and Ferrari. That's, I think, and don't quote me on this because I haven't double checked my fact. I'm just saying this. I think that is more power unit suppliers than the sport has ever seen before in its 75-year history. So, you're increasing the value of the product of Formula One with that as well. It Cadillac had to fight tooth and nail to make this whole thing happen. There were
mhm.
a lot of politics involved. There was a lot of justification of saying, we deserve this. This is what makes this work. Um, and they are seeing that it is going to be competition-wise a great thing, commercially a great thing. They see Cadillac as being able to come in and add value to what Formula One is as a whole. The other three teams were High Tech GP, Rodin, and something called Lucky Sons. There were a lot of steps that had to go through to prove like you're not just going to turn up with a pile of garbage and compete. You're actually going to bring us value and you're going to be worthwhile later on.
Do I have to become a Cadillac fan now as a Midwest American? I'm trying to convince all my non F1 friends to join the bandwagon. This is the easiest way to get into them now. You can be fans of multiple teams, just FYI.
You can do whatever the hell you want to do, but I
Amen.
do think it it helps if you're like you can look at a grid and say, "Oh, I know that logo. I know that brand." Like I and especially a lot of people I think in the United States, maybe not this generation so much, but have like very positive associations with Cadillac of like I always, my
That Seinfeld
grandpa
episode.
always wanted one,
Yeah.
my dad always wanted one, I always want one, my mom had one. It helps. I think Red
Bruce
Bull is great in
Springsteen
that
sings about it a bunch of times.
Bruce Springsteen has 1,000 Cadillac songs. I think it'll be good. See, test the waters. Get them into it. They'll know. They'll figure it out.
I'm so tired already thinking about people being like, oh, I thought Cadillac was supposed to be good. They're only P15. Blah, blah, blah. I was like,
I am absolutely going to lose my shit multiple
I
times
just,
next
I'm
year
not gonna
about
lose
this.
my
I
shit. I'm
know
just gonna
I
be
can
annoyed.
see it coming.
I want to engage on the internet and have discussions with fellow fans. I love it. I love discussing things. I'm such a big fan of talking back and forth in the comment section. Other people are just so they're just
So
not
many people want
logical.
to shut down the conversation immediately by telling you you're wrong. That's not going to do anything. That doesn't do anything for anybody involved.
No, it's not fun. I just
Uh-uh.
want everyone to have a good time and enjoy this rollout, especially all the
Yeah.
the content we're gonna get.